Hey, the crew. So it's midweek and we're back with another story. If you are enjoying the content so far, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'll get more subscriptions. I was aiming for 60 by the end of this month. Luckily, we've touched that and surpassed it a little. So let's try and go to the next barrier. Let's try and get 65 at least. So please support the channel. Just hit that thumbs up and subscribe. And now on to today's story. So this one is from the paranormal pages of Reddit and is called My Experiences as a Crime Scene Cleaner. To start out, you need a little backstory to show how I got into this situation. When I got out of high school, around 2003, finding a job was difficult, so I took whatever horrible jobs I could get by. When I found a job as a cleaner, fire and water damage full-time, I was excited to have a steady income and start saving, but this quickly turned into a nightmare that I had to endure for almost 2 years. The company I worked for put me on my first job, which was water damage claim, where a basement was flooded with sewage. So after a few days of work, we finished, and it was on to the next job. My boss then called me into his office the next morning and told me about a special crew that he was setting up, and asked if I would be the crew leader, supervising 3 other guys that were just hired. I found this strange, as I had only been working there for a total of around 3 days, but figured my work ethic was already paying off, and I would get a rise. I only made 10 an hour to start. Not only did I not just get a raise, but I got no training in the new position, other than a work van with cleaning material and the phone numbers of the 3 new guys that was also hired in to do fire/water damage cleanup. The boss told me what tools were best to use and what cleaning products to use to sanitize, along with where everything was located in the van, with hazmat suits and respirators. But he was vague about what kind of things I would be cleaning up. He just says the situations were always difficult, and I will get detailed instructions on each job. He called my position CSC, crew leader. The boss told me that I would never have to see the deceased, as a coroner would have the remains gone by the time my crew got there, and to use my logic in determining what needed to be removed from the homes and what could be cleaned. The first job I had in my new position, which the boss told me about when I got into the office, was cleaning up the remains of an elderly man or woman who died in their house and had been laying in the chair. When we arrived, the coroner had me come inside to show me a few things that were considered hazardous materials and needed to be removed due to the risk of disease. I guess my boss knew a few people from the county coroner's office, and much of the work came in from their recommendations. Not only was the deceased still in the house, but was fully visible to me and the other guys, and you could smell the rot through the masks, as the house had no AC. And this was mid-June. The coroner was backed up and waiting on additional people to show up to load the body, as it was falling apart. And I call the body it because I honestly couldn't tell if it was male or female, and was trying not to look too long as it was disturbing. The other 3 guys I worked with handled it well, but 2 got sick from the smell, and had to go outside to puke. We all waited outside after the coroner showed us, the chair, the fluids that leaked onto the carpet, and the basement, where the fluids went through the subfloor and puddled on some boxes in the basement. The coroner's supports arrived and took the deceased out, and me and the crew started working. After about 5 minutes, weird things started to happen. The first of which began when I disassembled the chair. I had removed the back of the chair and was putting it in the special hazmat bag that I was given, and the base started to rock. When I was about 10 feet away from putting the bag with the back of the chair by the front door, nobody else was in the same room as the other guys were in the basement, dealing with moving boxes. I brushed it off and took apart the base of the chair as much as I could, and when I got to the bag, I got a chill up my back and then began feeling sick. I just figured it was shock of what I was cleaning hitting me and pushed on, even though the chill was strange as I was very hot from the hazmat suit in June. Next was removing the carpet and assessing the floor to see if it would be able to be cleaned or if I had to remove a section of the floor. So I called the boss to ask him, and he told me just to pour a special cleaner on the area to soak the floorboards, and it would be fine. So I got it out of the truck where he had said it was and brought it inside. When I got inside, all three of the guys in the basement were scrambling to get out the basement, tripping over each other, and all three ran outside. When I asked them what was up, all three says there was somebody in the cluttered basement, and they assumed it was a homeless person or junkie. The Trice had many issues with these kinds of things. I listened at one of the open windows to the basement. It's kind of the first thing we did when we started working. Open any windows possible. Prop the doors open, so maybe someone inside then or possibly before we got there and was hiding. After listening a few minutes and hearing nothing, me and another of the workers went inside, armed with a mag light and a piece of metal fence post, and searched the basement. Nothing was down there, but the footprints of the shoe covers we used. But when we started up the stairs, we heard a horrible hacking cough from somewhere in the basement. When we looked for it, there was nothing but the corner of the basement had a bunch of dust stirred up like somebody was moving things very recently. It weirded us both out. We called the guys back in, and they got back to the boxes, but all of them kept feeling like we were being touched while throwing away material from the boxes that got fluid on them. I went back to my upstairs job, but found the cleaner I put next to the floorboards was gone. Then I started getting frustrated, as it was the only jug I had of this cleaner, and I clearly remember it being set next to the area before the guys ran up the stairs, and my attention was redirected. I began to take out the trash, figuring I would find it eventually, or the basement guys took it for the floor and I'd find it on its side, behind the bag that had just been used for the back of the chair. This was impossible. There were like 6 other bags in front of the one near the front door, and this was a gallon of bottle cleaner again. I got the chill. but this one was brought on by what sounded like a whisper that I could not make out the words to. I cleaned the floorboards and moved out the trash. Job complete. That night, each member of my crew had a dream about an older man telling us that we were not welcome in his house, touching his belongings, and we need to leave. In my dream, I was alone in his house. The old man cried and told me I was destroying his things, and he couldn't replace anything. He was trying to push me out of his house, but it was like I was ignoring him. Even when he would push and scream at me, no reaction from me. He would then throw my cleaner into the garbage pile I had made by the front door, exactly where I found it. 2 of the 3 guys in the crew told me their dreams about the old man pushing them as they went through the boxes of ruined pictures and other old stuff that needed to be thrown out due to the risk of disease from his fluids. They also said it was like they had no control and were on autopilot. They said they were so sad but couldn't do anything. The thing that got me about the dreams of the other 2 guys was that they both said the man was getting so upset that he began violently coughing, and that made the man keep grabbing their arms when they would touch boxes or throw things into the trash. Neither of the guys were in the house when me and the other guy heard the coughing from the basement. The guy that went into the basement with me said he had a dream, but all he remembered was waking up, sad, like he did something wrong, and had a horrible coughing fit, which might be a coincidence, but I connect it, in my mind, as related to the other dreams. We all talked about it and came to a conclusion that we were all just having reactions to the situation, and it was nothing more than our brains copying with what we had to do. I'm very into psychology, so I rationalised it the best I could, and we hoped for better assignments the next day. The next few jobs were not so bad. Cleaning up blood at a home invasion, no casualty, but a huge mess. Then there was other bloody crimes with casualties, but nothing notable happened. About 2 weeks into the job, we began to learn tricks of the trade, and we were split into 2 different groups that I was responsible for managing as crew leader. So I would have to go to different sites if the other 2 guys had any issues or didn't know what to do. I thought I was getting used to the job, as well as the other guys, as we had no other experiences like the first job, but I was wrong. The next job that there was actively was a suicide of a man that was middle-aged. The coroner had already removed the body, but he was a mess. The guy had shot himself with what I think was a large caliber handgun or a shotgun. As the spray was everywhere, in the basement, in like a second living room, there was a skull fragment lodged in the drywall, brain matter, and again, he was not found for a bit, so the smell was horrible. First step in cleaning this was using a backpack vacuum cleaner to suck up all the biomaterial. The coroner told us when we went in that he and his partner were extremely uneasy in the house, and it felt strange, and we immediately started getting claustrophobic, suffocating feeling when we went into the basement as well. To make matters worse, The family of the man had came over and were crying upstairs, but the vacuum noise helped to cancel that out. While I was cleaning, the power to the lights went out, and it was completely pitch black. This was strange because my vacuum was still powered. My crewmate started screaming at this point, so I turned off the vacuum and climbed off my ladder. I thought maybe he touched a wire to the lights, but when my vacuum unit was turned off, he was still screaming, and I couldn't hear a thing being knocked over. I started fumbling around for my flashlight on my tool belt and yelled for my friend, asking what was going on, but all I got back was panicking and screaming. Then I saw in the pitch black something darker that was moving in my direction, and I will admit I freaked out. I slipped trying to back up, still looking on my belt for my flashlight, and found it when my back hit the basement wall. I turned on the light and aimed it at the blackish shape I had never seen, and when the light turned on, I saw the shape of a man wearing a flannel shirt, beard, and an expression like he was about to attack me. Then it was gone. My crewmate was behind where the entity was, sitting on the floor, rocking with his head in his hands. When I approached him, he picked up his flashlight off the ground and turned it on, then ran up the stairs and outside and threw up. I followed him, asking if he was okay and why he was screaming. I thought I just imagined the entity and the man because of his screaming, and it scared me. But he told me that he rubbed the wall and felt something pulling on his belt, and he thought it was me. But when he turned around, the light went out, and he was engulfed by what he said was like a dark smoke, and he immediately could not breathe and was struggling to move. He managed to pull his flashlight out, but when it was knocked out of his hand, like his wrist was grabbed with a force, and he managed to scream. When he screamed, trinkets started falling off an entertainment centre that was about 3 feet to his side, and the black smoke moved back, but he was close to passing out from the exertion. He also said he lost his hearing and didn't know that any noise came out when he started screaming, and that the stuff falling from the shelves was landing on him, and that's why he was covering his head. He said it felt like a weight was lifted off him when the dark smoke backed up, but felt sick right away, and the light from my flashlight made the sick feeling increase. We took an early lunch where he just sat there, pale as ever, and didn't say much, other than he said he breathed in the smoke and didn't feel right. I got him some Gatorade, and his colour started to come back. I never told him I saw the man when I turned on my light, because we still needed to finish, and I didn't want to put that in his head, since he never mentioned seeing it. When we went back, the lights in the basement were on again. Half of the things that fell from the shelves were back on the entertainment centre, and the TV was on. Baseball. There was also a different smell in the room, similar to burnt hair. My worker stayed a half hour, got sick again, and went home for the day, leaving me alone to finish, which I didn't want to do, but I had to, as the other guys had their own job. After cleaning up everything with my vacuum, I began scrubbing the old blood, which was hard after it congeals, mixing grey matter, and it's like glue. Even with cleaner, while I was finishing up, I kept seeing the shape of a person, always inside of my vision. Each time I would smell that strange burnt hair scent. And a few times I also felt a force was pulling at items on my belt. Not sure what items they were, but there were several things on my belt. When I finished the job, I went to use the bathroom upstairs, and in the hallway along the way I heard a muffled crying or moaning. I froze up and stayed still, thinking maybe a family member had come back. And when I panned around, there was nothing. But I saw a picture on the wall of a man with a beard, wearing a flannel. Several other pictures in the hallway of other scenarios of the same man, different flannels, with deer or fish or family. I had not seen a picture of that man, as I had not been anywhere else in the house with a bathroom, nor did I use the bathroom downstairs, because pulling off a hazmat suit is a pain. As I was securing the house, closing all the windows, locking doors, and shutting down every light but the front porch light, I saw the front curtain move, and again saw a darker than black form in the front window. The last experience I will share in this thread happened mid-July in a very bad area of Detroit. There had been an incident where a guy supposedly tried to abduct a child, but was stopped by people in the neighborhood who beat the man very bad, and he escaped to his house, where the neighborhood people quickly called the police, and civilians surrounded the man's house to prevent escape. The police response time in this area was horrible, and the people were throwing rocks through the man's windows and damaging his car. The man was hurt bad by the mob, and was hurt by a rock or glass, and died in the home. This is an assumption by DPD. From what the people from the police force told me, it was a misunderstanding, and the man picked up a girl that was injured riding her bike, and some kids that knew her, told their parents that the man was kidnapping her, and people overreacted, and the man was brutally beaten. The clean-up was pretty simple to do. We secured the windows, cleaned up blood and bodily fluids, but as soon as I entered the house, I just felt a wave after wave of fear and sadness, like I never felt this before, and it hit in waves that made my legs weak. My work buddy, who was there, showed a plate and didn't get the story from the cop like I did, but experienced the same feeling I had. The whole time we were there, we saw a form darting around corners like he was watching us, then hiding. It was similar to like a small bit of fog or mist. We also heard very slight cries for help coming from several areas in the house, and also it sounded like please stop and long no a few times. The crowd come back and yelled at the house also. And when this was going into activity in the house increased, and we could hear running footsteps go up the stairs, door slams, and it sounded like the front door would open and close, but we never saw anything or any doors move. The path of footsteps sounded like from the front door, through the living room, to the bathroom, to stairs, to the upstairs bungalow room. The part that really got me was I could feel the floor impact that felt like the vibrations of somebody running past me when I was cleaning the areas. Each time I would be hit by one of those waves of fear and sadness. When we left the house, there were a few people on the porches, hanging out like is usual during the summer. The people were still hostile and yelling random things, but directed at us as we loaded the van up and took off the hazmat suits. We ignored this, but before we had loaded the materials from the house into the van and locked the house, the front door slammed hard enough to sound like a gunshot, which scared me and my crew, along with people on the front porch, to the point they went inside. The front door, dead bolted, was somehow locked, and we could not get in. I think it was a different key than the knob, so we ended up leaving several boards in the house that were left over from boarding of a few windows. The feeling of relief when I left the house was like night and day. Inside I was anxious, scared and paranoid, and just really down, which could be due to knowing the story. But when I got outside, it was like flipping the light switch back on. I immediately felt better, and me and the other guy in my crew were joking and laughing about dumb stuff and normal 19-20-year-old shenanigans. I have many of these stories written down in detail and journals I started after the first 3 months of working at this job. I talked to the guys in the crew and got other strange stories from them too. I know that some of this could be very well formed from my subconscious mind to cope with the traumatic situations, but some of it has no explanation. And when I hear other members of my crew tell me their stories when they haven't been influenced by mine, that is a horse of a different colour. When I have time, I'll pull out the journal and give more of my experiences. The job got way worse than I started, and the journal after 3 months in, several experiences with what I think was paranormal situations that stressed my mental states to the point where my mask of sanity started to slip. In the end, I worked at this place for almost 2 years, and of my crew, all died, 2 from 2 suicides, 1 from a drug overdose. That could have been intentional, but we will never know. I just know that when these 3 guys, my age, around 19 and 20, started the job, they were normal, well-adjusted guys with no cares in the world other than girls, parties and working. I watched each one of them slowly drain their joys and passions for life. And I know this sounds bad, but each one that died was considered enough to die in a clean way. Most likely so another person wouldn't have to see the horrible thing that we all saw so often. So I hope you enjoyed that story. If you did, please support the channel by hitting like and subscribing for more content. And I'll be back soon.